back to Capitol Hill Ocean Talk, live from Washington, D.C. at Capitol Hill Ocean Week 2017. I am your host, Kate Thompson. The ocean is the lifeblood of Earth. It covers more than 70% of our planet's surface, drives our weather patterns, regulates temperature, and ultimately supports every single living organism on our planet. For humans, the ocean is vital for sustenance, transportation, commerce, growth, and inspiration. But for all that, 95% of the ocean remains unexplored. Today, we'll be talking about how new technology is enabling scientists to delve into the deep, unexplored areas of the ocean and make fascinating new discoveries. Plus, this technology enables viewers at home to follow along in real time. Joining us today to talk about how technology is expanding our ocean horizons is Brian Kennedy, Telepresence Coordinator for NOAA's Office of Ocean Exploration and Research. Brian helps maintain and improve the current telepresence abilities on the NOAA ship Oceanus Explorer and plans ways to take advantage of emerging technologies. I'm also joined by Dr. Steve Giddings, Science Coordinator for NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. Steve works with NOAA scientists to better understand sanctuary ecosystems, track changing conditions, and reduce human impacts. I'm also excited to have Dr. Katie Croft-Bell with us today. Katie is Vice President of Ocean Exploration and Research at Ocean Exploration Trust, where she works with her team aboard the exploration vessel Nautilus to use telepresent technology for remote science and education. Katie is also the Vice Chair for the Marine Protected Area Federal Advisory Committee. We also have Jeff Gray, Superintendent of Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, in the studio with us today. Jeff leads our nation's only freshwater National Marine Sanctuary and guides research and protection of Thunder Bay's maritime heritage resources. And last, but certainly not least, we have Julie Bursick, Team Lead for Education and Outreach for Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary. She's joining us all the way from California. Julie develops education programs and partnerships that increase awareness about the sanctuary's cultural heritage and living resources. Thanks everybody for joining me today in the studio. And Julie, you from California, I really appreciate it.
Good morning.
This is an exciting topic, but most people don't even know what telepresence is. Brian, can you give us a little bit of a background on what telepresence is and why we would want to bring images from the bottom of the ocean to the world?
Yeah, absolutely. So telepresence, by definition, is just using technology to make someone experience a place they're not actually there through video, audio, visual, high bandwidth internet connection. And the reason that's really important is a couple-fold. It's really difficult to get to a lot of the ocean. Even some coastal areas can be really difficult for scientists and the public to reach. So by using these telepresence technologies, we can facilitate someone being there without having to do all the logistics of flying them halfway around the world, sailing 10 days out to the middle of the ocean. We can let them do it from their home institution, right from their laptop at their desk.
Well, Katie, you and I go back quite a long ways.
We do.
2001 to be exact, when we first explored the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary in Lake Huron.
That's right.
It was Bob Ballard's expedition. Here we are in our Gumby suits, practicing safety on board the vessel that went to look and explore and find shipwrecks in Thunder Bay. But now you are big with the Ocean of Exploration Trust, and you're live right now. The Nautilus is live.
We are live right now.
Tell us a little bit about what we're about to see.
Absolutely. So the Ocean Exploration Trust has the exploration vessel Nautilus, EV Nautilus, and right now it is in the middle of a 7th-month expedition off the west coast of the United States, Canada, and Mexico. So as we speak, this video that you're seeing right now is live. They're off the coast of British Columbia, using remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, to do maintenance and deploy and recover instruments and all sorts of equipment with the Ocean Networks Canada group. So they have a cabled observatory that's offshore and underwater with lots of different sensors to study the ocean over long time periods. It has a tsunami warning system and all sorts of sensors that scientists and the government are using to better understand this area off the Pacific Northwest.
So tell us about Ocean Exploration Trust and why you think it's important to explore the ocean.
Sure. So OET was founded in 2008 by Dr. Robert Ballard, and the mission really is to go out and explore places that either have never been explored before or are very poorly understood. So we go through a big community-based process to identify locations to go and explore, and right now we are in the Eastern Pacific. We've been in the Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, Mediterranean, and Black Seas over the years, and really the idea is to go and collect this sort of baseline information of to characterize these areas that are really, really unknown in terms of biology, geology, seafloor mapping, cultural resources. And in particular, recently we've partnered with the marine sanctuaries so that we can provide more information to the sanctuaries and sanctuary managers so they can better do their jobs.
So I know that you take scientists on board with you, but Bob Ballard also put together a program called Doctor on Call. What is that program, and how does it enable scientists to connect to the ship?
Yeah, so we have sort of a twofold program. One goal is to really have a big network of scientists who are on shore that we can call at any time. So if we make a discovery, we find a shipwreck, we find a new ecosystem, we can figure out who is the expert in that field and call them and have them tune in and really advise us on what we're doing, because we're not able to have all of the brains in the world on the ship at any given time. And the other goal for the scientists ashore is really to have the capacity to have teams of scientists involved in planning and executing dives in a more planned way. So one example is when we dove on the SS Coast Trader, which is a merchant vessel that was sunk by a Japanese submarine in World War II off the coast of Washington. And we had a group of archaeologists and historians from NOAA and the Coast Guard and several other organizations at the University of Rhode Island Inner Space Center, all working together to plan and direct that dive to better understand what the ship is doing, since it hasn't been seen for more than 60 years.
Yeah. So Steve, I know that you've been one of those doctors on call in multiple different expeditions. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience in that?
Well, I have, and it is a really interesting way to do science, and something that I grew up not even having a concept of until this capability became available. And before you knew it, not only, well, for years we had started building more and more team approach to science, more and more scientists getting involved in expedition planning. But this ramped it up to a whole new level where hundreds of people could participate in planning science, pore over maps, decide where a cruise should go, and then participate actively, real time, in that cruise and interact with the ship and tell people, I think we need to change plans now to do something different. Or, what was that I just saw? Well, I have no clue because I'm a coral scientist, but I'm a phone call away from a shark scientist who can identify that shark in a second. And being able to have that real-time interaction, you'd learn on the fly. Everybody who listens can learn on the fly and learn from the many scientists who are working in the biggest classroom in the world, the ocean, and bring it to the science community and bring it to students and everybody else who wants to learn from this through classrooms and through any other internet connection you might be able to have. So it became a very exciting way to do science, and personally a very enriching way, because I got to learn a whole lot more, a whole lot faster by having direct contact with scientists who are immediately available.
So you're saying if there's a sponge that Katie happened to see on board the ship and they have no idea what kind of sponge it is, you'd be able to help them with that.
The sponge expert
via
on the other
telepresence.
end of the phone can tell me what sponge it is.
That's really, really cool. So Julie, it's not just scientists that benefit from the telepresence, but Steve had mentioned education and teachers and students. You have actually worked on expeditions with me and Steve and others multiple times, and we're always thinking about the people who are watching at home. How is telepresence important to the average person and teachers and students as well?
Well, I think, as Steve and Brian both said, it's an opportunity to be able to follow alongside in real time. And I mean, for example, last summer when the Nautilus was mapping and characterizing the deeper portions of the Challenge National Marine Sanctuary, we had 525 students per day on average participating, or 57 different live interaction events. We also had Bob Ballard did a Google Hangout chat that reached over 137,000 people. People were following along real time, even when we didn't have live events going on, because the ship is wired 24/7. So even when we're out mapping and just trying to get the characterization maps developed so that we can figure out where we want to dive, we had people following along with that as well. So because research ships only are limited on space and only so many people can go out, before telepresence, you have to wait for post-processing of data to be able to share the information and communicate the science that happened. And what's great about this technology and these ships of exploration is that we can invite people to participate in the research and the exploration as it's happening live. And as Steve said, the excitement of discovery is just something that it's hard to describe, but to be able, when you see something you don't know, like last year when we found this purple orb, which I think you have video of that you'll show. We were all trying to figure out what it was on the fly in the control room, and we had our scientists on call typing in what they thought it was, and it's still, we're still having it be described right now. The orb we collected it, and it's at the Harvard University's Museum of Comparative Zoology, and they're going through and describing it and they think we might have a new species. So there's still a lot to discover out there off our coast, and it's great to engage our communities in that discovery.
Yeah, well, Julie had an amazing, like she was just saying, of this purple orb that they found last year. And it's just so exciting because both the Nautilus and the Okeanos allow for research scientists as well as educators to be on board with the Teacher at Sea program. So it's an amazing thing for these people to have these experiences. So we're actually going to play that clip right now, Julie. And I believe that your voice is one of the voices that's trying to figure out what the purple orb is. So let's go ahead and roll that Nautilus clip.
I think you almost walked me through the rock cycle.
Got it. Yeah. I think we've got little clams there.
You have a look at that dark
that guy
purple
there?
blob on the left.
Yeah, the purple.
Good
Purple
spot.
blob.
Great mind.
Purple blob.
Blob is
What is
purplish.
that? I've not
Teeny
seen
tiny
before.
mama
ahead and zoom in.
octopus.
Yeah,
I'm
coming
crossing
in.
my fingers for it.
It has the. It does
Oh,
the,
what is that?
I actually have
Hold
no
on.
I don't know what
idea.
that is. Could that be a salp or a type of a tunicate? I'm just thinking of the planktonic kind that are sort of lumpy and thick like that.
I'm stumped.
So, Julie, what was it like to be on the ship while you were trying to figure out what that purpleus orbilis was?
Oh, it was really exciting because at first it didn't look like a marine organism. It was really weird looking. And they were like, what is that? And it was something, it was so different from anything else we'd been seeing during our ROV dives. And what was really weird is after we collected it, it was perfectly cylindrical and sort of lumpy or bumpy. And they have a suction arm that we were able to collect the specimen. But when the dive finished and it came to the surface later, it wasn't spherically round anymore. It actually ended up relaxing and becoming two lobes, and then you could see the muscular foot. So we're like, oh my gosh, it's some type of a marine snail. So it completely changed its shape as it came up from the depths to the surface. And everybody on board, there were many experts that were on board as well with deep sea ecology, were still stumped. They didn't know what it was. So we knew we were on to something pretty cool.
Well, I think the press actually called it the disco ball, purple disco ball, discovered
there were
in
all
Channel
sorts of-
Islands National Marine Sanctuary.
The alien eggs. There are tons of
right.
headlines.
Tons of headlines. Gotta love the media, the
Exactly.
press afterwards.
And
But
that's one of the things when you're the scientist, you're thinking in real time, but you're being recorded and heard, and you see one thing at first and decide another. I mean, that's been an interesting thing. It's almost like a reality show where you're having kind of informal conversations and people are watching you at the same time.
right, people are watching you say purpleus orbilis.
There is risk involved in television.
Yeah, right.
Yes, correct.
There's definitely risk. It is a
You
reality
have to watch
show.
what you say.
Yep.
But
Put the delay on so you can.
Change it later. Brian, your office also, NOAA's Office of Ocean Exploration and Research, is all about exploring the ocean. Why would the government be interested in caring about ocean exploration?
Well, for a lot of different reasons. One is just how important the ocean is to everyday life. I mean, 50% of the oxygen in every breath you take is from the ocean, and billions of dollars of goods, commerce, transport come from the oceans or transit the ocean. So it's vitally important for everything the nation does. But one of the things people really doesn't understand about the United States is there's actually more underwater United States, submerged America, if you will, than there is on land. It's about 10 million square kilometers of emergent land and about 11 million square kilometers of ocean. And of that, we know 95% of that is unexplored. So it's really the job of NOAA's Office of Ocean Exploration and Research to go out there and do a Lewis and Clark style exploration. Go out, make a map, ground truth that map with a couple ROV dives and see what's there. Then we try and make that data as publicly available as quickly as possible to facilitate managers, industry, defense, any users of our data be able to get their access to that as soon as possible so that they can make the best use of it in making those decisions.
So speaking of data, there's obviously hours and hours of footage because you run ships 24/7. So how do you take that data from these expeditions and do something with it for like an end user like Jeff at a sanctuary who needs to know what's down there?
That's a huge problem, and that's one across many fields of science right now, the big data problem. There's so much data that there aren't enough human hours to analyze it all. So the approach OER has taken is we collect the data and then try and archive it with the most metadata, the most explanation as possible to allow any users. So we try and think about trying to archive the data for uses we haven't even been able to come up with yet. So putting that data out there in the public domain, it allows people to access it to whatever ends they have, and they can apply the most up-to-date research methods to that data when they can.
So Steve, how has remote access, not just for scientists, but also to the general public, helped on missions, do you think?
Well, if you just think about that challenge that Brian just talked about, the data problem. So much data coming in, and in the old days, if this much data was coming in, very little of it would ever have been looked at by the small team that was on the ship. Now we have access to people all over the world who can participate in a citizen science way to help look at information, and scientists around the world who can do the same. So we can at least have access and potential to analyze a whole lot more of that data than we could have before. So to me, that's a huge benefit to science and a huge benefit to the public to be able to participate in a very real way in science expeditions. So I think telepresence has really benefited the public and science in both those ways.
I think the lines have been blurred by telepresence. So it's a research project, it's a management project, it's an education project. All three of those things collide, and then we're able to do that. And so we've talked about how we can educate people about the discoveries we're making, but I think there's equal interest about how we do our research. But I think the biggest value I've seen is that your definition you had in the beginning is we're taking people to these places, and our job as managers is to get people to care about these places. And it's hard to get people to care for something that they can't see or touch. Right. And this is a way to connect them to it. I mean, we're glad they're there with the orb, but they see the value, the beauty of these places. They see the passion of the scientists on board, and that, I think, brings them to the table to realize how important that giant chunk of our country that's underwater is to protect.
That, and in the instance of like the orb, they're seeing the scientist in their native environment and not understanding everything. I think some of the video clips that have gone viral from both the Okeanos and the Nautilus have generally been when the scientists are stumped. And
that's really important. Like most of the headlines from the purple orb, from the stubby octopus, from the sperm whale were all how scientists were reacting. Mm-hmm. Scientists lose their when they saw the sperm whale, for example. It wasn't about the animal necessarily. It was about the human reaction to what we were seeing.
Right. Well, Jeff, for Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, that's up in Lake Huron, we think of these big ships doing the telepresence, but I know that you have in Thunder Bay actually done telepresence from small vessels. Can you tell us about what goes on in sanctuaries off of small vessels?
To me, it's the amazing thing. We did some of those early projects and even the 90s up in the Great Lakes and some over in Wisconsin, then some in the 2000s with Dr. Bell. But it's the technology. I think we were early adopters of this, and now as the technology, we figured out how to do it with the big internet and the big technology need. But then as you use your FaceTime now off your iPhone to do stuff, that you can do it really from anywhere. You can. So we do it with small boats, with kids. Instead of being a giant project, it's an everyday thing that we can do. And it's a two-way street. That's what the opportunity we have at our place. We have the world discover Northeast Michigan through when we're broadcasting, but then we take your broadcasts and bring them into our facility, and Alpina discovers the rest of the world. And it's really this amazing two-way street. And the work that was done with Dr. Ballard really put a light on Alpina, and it not only helped people realize what the Great Lakes are and that they're important, but for our community, they felt special, like that this was an important enough place that the rest of the world was looking at it. And that, I think it's why there's been such great success in the sanctuary, because of those early years of the work you guys did there. So.
Well, Jeff, you mentioned off your smartphone. We're actually broadcasting live on Facebook Live right now. Yeah. So it's not just through the internet, but you have Facebook Live, you have YouTube Live. There's all these different ways to get this stuff out there and go live, and people love it when it's live. So you're the superintendent up at the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary. It might seem counterintuitive to use robots and telepresence in a lake. I mean, you don't think of a lake as being someplace that needs to be explored, but can you tell us all of the cool things that have been explored and found in Lake Huron and throughout the Great Lakes?
Yeah, and you know, it's a small ocean, these lakes, you know, 30-foot seas, 40-foot seas out there, several hundred feet deep. You know, it's the same problems that you have in the ocean, except for we're limited in the, it's frozen for part of the year, so we can't get out there, so we're limited. But from finding new shipwrecks to finding new fisheries habitat, finding sinkholes, we've really done these multi-mission types where it's not just about a shipwreck. That it's the data is the data, and we share it with all the scientists. And I think that's the key. There's not enough money for everybody to do their research. There's not enough time. But how do we collect data in a way that has these multiple uses?
I know that you have found wrecks that have been mysteries since like 1850 with the mast still standing. Is that just the most amazing moment? I mean, I know you've even had students on board that have had the shipwreck hunting abilities because of this technology. It must just be an aha moment.
Similar to all the work that's done here, it's hours and hours of looking, and then when that moment happens, there's nothing like it. And then there's moments where you think it's one thing and you find out it's something else, and it's just a powerful experience. And to see something for the first time is amazing. And then I think it is, telepresence is like the equivalent of ROVs. When ROVs became more prevalent in the research, that it wasn't just the divers that could go down there. Now it's not just the people on the ship that can go there, and it's the same way that we're bringing a better team to tackle the problem.
And we're doing it in times when technology is changing really fast. So this is all evolving. We're not perfect on telepresence yet. And while we're trying to perfect what we can do with current technologies, new technologies are already emerging that are going to improve our ability to bring this all to the world, including virtual reality, possibly 3D videos and things like that we haven't incorporated yet on ROVs, but people are starting to.
It's
coming.
And I think that's one of the things that I'm most excited about looking at what OER is going to be able to do in the future is we've really only had a two-dimensional kind of with 35 degrees of view angle out of a camera is what we call telepresence now. When you think about the experience of someone in a submarine or even being on the ship and having a wall of 25 monitors in a ship control room, we're really just scratching the surface of telepresence. And the advent of virtual reality, augmented reality, things like that's really going to blow the doors off of seagoing telepresence.
Having the public involved at that time is a very important time, because there are many people out there tuning in that probably have better ideas than we do on how to engage this new technology.
Well, let's take it to the policy side of things. Julie, because I mean, out of sight, out of mind, right? I mean, if it's far deep in the ocean, people don't really understand it. They don't really care because they can't see it. So, Julie, how has it really helped us on the education and outreach front, the marine policy front, to show people what's out there, to get them engaged and want to protect these places?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, most people's interaction with the ocean is the surface. And so, and with the near shore environment, and when we think about that, we're off the Southern California coast around the 5 Northern Channel Islands, with 50% of it, we didn't know much about it. And thinking about, you know, our role as trustees of this place, how do we protect the place if we don't know what's there? So the advent of these technologies that allow us to go explore deep places, and then to be able to broadcast that live and get people excited about it, to realize that there's this whole complexity beneath the surface of the ocean, and there's beautiful coral gardens and colorful rockfish and unusual creatures that we've never seen before, and that there's still a lot to be explored and discovered, and that we need to work together to protect this place. And so it's that engagement piece I think is really important. And I think that engaging our communities in science and the scientific process and how we use science to make decisions about how we're going to protect the place is really important. So yeah, I think I'm excited to see how these technologies are going to evolve, and our communication tools as well, because it's just a really exciting time, I think, to be in ocean exploration.
Well, we have a ton of questions from Facebook Live. That's what's great about going live,
Fantastic.
Right? So what would you suggest, I'm going to go with Katie, for aspiring marine biologists who want to get involved?
Sure. Well, definitely just tune in to Nautilus Live for a start. You're able to write in questions on nautiluslive.org and sort of get involved with the team, see what we're doing. We also have a lot of opportunities for particularly students and educators to get involved with actually coming out on the ship. So on OceanExplorationTrust.org is where we post all of our opportunities for internships and our Science Communication Fellowship. So those usually get posted in the late fall, like November, December timeframe, with deadlines in January or February. So definitely check that out in a couple of months and see if you qualify for opportunities to be able to come out to sea with us. Because it's really, going to sea for me is what got me into ocean exploration in the first place. It was just a completely life-changing experience. So I highly recommend just getting out and experiencing as much as you possibly can.
Well, Jeff, we have an aspiring ROV pilot.
I think it's important, Kate.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Julie. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just thinking that it's really important for students to see that you don't have to be a traditional marine biologist to have a career in the ocean. When we were out last year, we interviewed a lot of the different PIs and crew that were out on the Nautilus. And a lot of them had marine or mechanical engineering degrees, and they also had ocean. They took ocean courses in college as well. But there's a lot of different disciplines that are used in ocean management, and to really kind of expose students that are trying to figure out their own career pathways. If they really want to work around the ocean, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. And so I think that that's what's exciting about these sorts of telepresence technologies and being able to engage in expeditions live.
Yes,
the diversity of careers that are out there.
Thanks for adding that, Julie. Yeah, the question was about being a marine biologist, but we do have opportunities for video engineers, mechanical engineers, ocean engineers, electrical engineers. All sorts of different people are involved in these projects and are required to make them successful.
Right.
You can't just have 30 marine biologists on board.
And I think the power of telepresence is that some people don't know about these career opportunities, and it shows that there's cool stuff you can do if you're passionate about it. And I think the interviews that are done, it shows people, like, if you want to be a marine biologist, go after it, but you have to go after it hard. And I mean, it's been fun to watch kids connect with these different disciplines, and we've all been around long enough where you've seen kids that are now doing it professionally, and it's so rewarding.
Well, actually, I want to point that out because Thunder Bay's had an amazing evolution. You have all these ROVs come up there all the time, and you have the local community college, actually, Alpena Community College, that started a marine technology group there because of the Sanctuary. We have an aspiring ROV pilot on Facebook Live, and they have a question about, how do I get involved with the Sanctuary?
Yeah, and so we have an underwater robotics program that we've been doing that Kate helped start back in early 2000s, and we have about 30 schools now that are doing ROV programs that come to Alpena and compete. Now in our area, you can go from grade school, middle school, high school, and have an ROV experience. And then the college started a 2-year degree program. So I think contacting Alpena Community College would be a great way. They have summer classes as well. And it's an amazing field. As you guys all know, there's research, there's industry, there's so many different ways you can go into it.
So we also have a question off of Facebook Live, and Brian or Katie, they're just wondering, is any research done off the Canadian coast?
Absolutely. Nautilus is there right now. So you can go check it out. They're off the coast of Vancouver, British
Can
Columbia.
we show up that live feed again? Because it's so cool seeing it live. Maybe that live feed?
Yep, there you go. They're diving right now.
I wish I was there.
That's great.
Right. Wow, that looks like they're
on Clayoquot Slope. It's not too far offshore outside of Victoria.
Wow.
No, that's the lasers.
Looks
It looks like bubbles.
the
So yeah,
surface of the moon.
we're working with Ocean Networks Canada, which is a group based at the University of Victoria, to do maintenance on their cabled observatory that's underwater and also some scientific objectives. So the last 4 days they've been working with a cable ship that was laying cable to expand this network and also do all sorts of maintenance and work on the observatory itself. You wouldn't believe pictures of the ship right now with all of the gear and equipment piled on top of each other. So it's very exciting. So yes, absolutely, there's a lot of work done there. And Ocean Networks Canada, in addition to the work that they do with us, with the Nautilus, they also work with other vessels and run a lot of expeditions throughout the year. So
well, Michael on Facebook Live, thank you so much for that question. So we could go back to our live feed and show the excitement of it.
Yeah, there you go.
So Brian, I'm actually there was another question on Facebook Live about how each of you got to the career that you're in right now. Brian, why don't I ask you that question?
I've had a little little bit of I guess, a non-standard career path. My undergraduate degree is in marine biology, and then I joined the NOAA Corps, which most people have never heard of, but it's the 7th and smallest uniformed service of the federal government. And the NOAA Corps operates the U.S. NOAA's fleet of research vessels and aircraft. So I spent 6 years as a NOAA Corps officer, working on the Oceanus Explorer and through land assignments with the Office of Ocean Exploration and Research. And now I'm a civilian with there. So I've kind of had a more operational, hands-on kind of approach and less academic than others.
So, Steve, how about you?
So maybe a little more traditional, although my career started about 5 minutes after getting off a plane the first time I went to the Caribbean, and I said, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. So I just stuck with it and prolonged my adolescence as long as I could in school and stayed in school long enough to have them give me a PhD and say, go do something else. You've been in school long enough. But I went through the academic route, biology, oceanography, and then biological oceanography. Ended up with a PhD, and I had been working for NOAA under contract on certain projects and was enamored with the marine sanctuaries and the National Undersea Research Program, which was used to exist, and did some of this kind of work with submersibles and ROVs and diving. And I just stayed with it. Persistence, stayed with it. Everybody wants to be a marine biologist, but not everybody sticks with it long enough with that desire and that education to be able to end up lucky enough like myself. Right. And I became a marine sanctuary manager, was my first job with NOAA, and then became chief scientist with the national program of marine sanctuaries. So that's academic and then experiential routes kind of got me into NOAA.
Nice. Well, Katie, when I first met you, you were just starting your graduate program, I believe, in your PhD.
I was actually in the middle of the Knaus Fellowship.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for my undergrad, I studied ocean engineering, and during my junior year, had the opportunity to go to the Black Sea to look for shipwrecks with Bob Ballard, and
doesn't get better than that.
It doesn't get better than that. So that was like, well, that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I've been very fortunate to have had a lot of experiences and opportunities to do just that. So after my undergrad, I did the Sea Grant Knaus Fellowship and worked in the Ocean Exploration Office, which had just started. We didn't even have offices yet. And had the opportunity to go to Thunder Bay. And after that, did my master's in maritime archaeology over in England. And then as I was finishing that, Bob was starting up an archaeological oceanography program at the University of Rhode Island and asked me to come be one of his graduate students. So I ended up there, and during the course of my graduate time is when he started OET and got the Nautilus, and so I started working on that while I was a student, and then when I graduated, went full-time. So that's what I've been doing for the last 6 years.
I forget, it's been, gosh, almost 10 years now ago, where I opened up the National Geographic magazine, and here I see Katie Croft as a National Geographic Emerging Explorer, and I was like, I know her! No, that was really cool. So
Stay tuned.
Amazing on that. So Jeff, how about you?
Archaeology is the key to cool jobs, right?
Hey.
So I was on a different path. I was math, physics, and I wanted to be an engineer for Ford or GM. I grew up in Detroit, and I thought that would be a cool job, and I accidentally took an archaeology class and then took a second one and kept going. And it's a weird day when you go home and tell your parents you don't want to be an engineer anymore, you want to be an archaeologist. And so I did some terrestrial work, and then I read about underwater, and I had no diving experience, no boating experience. I liked the lakes, but I wasn't, and I taught myself kind of how to dive and boats, and just absolutely fell in love with it, and did what Steve said. It's just kind of put in the time and got lucky enough to get a great job and work with all you guys.
Very cool. I think my father said to me when I said I wanted to be an underwater archaeologist, isn't that an avocation, not an avocation? But come on, Dad, it's so cool. But Julie, how about you?
I've always loved the ocean. I always knew I wanted to work around the ocean when I grew up. I find it very inspiring. So I did my undergrad in aquatic biology here at University of California, Santa Barbara, and then completed my master's at Cal State Fullerton in intertidal ecology. And I've always loved talking about science and teaching about science. So I took the education route and worked for 10 years down in Dana Point, and I started up I managed a floating laboratory program that took students and the public out on vessels and got them excited about the ocean. And then I came and started working for the Challenge National Marine Sanctuary in 1999. I've been here ever since. I love what I do. I've diversified my work. I'm also an avid diver. I've been diving since the 80s in Southern California, and so managing the diving program here at our site as well. It's really every day is new and different, and I love it.
So thanks, everyone. That's a great background. I think everybody has a different path to where they are, but just, keeping to it, keeping studying, and, have faith you'll get there. And I love coming to work every day. And I'm sure all of you do too. So Katie, where do you think the future of telepresence is?
Future of telepresence. Well, I think that in terms of robotics, we still have a long way to go. There are a lot of autonomous vehicles out there. And in terms of sort of efficiency of exploration, really maximizing all of the different ways that we explore is something that we're going to have to do if we're really going to understand U.S. waters, international waters, because the way we're doing it right now, with 1 or 2 ROVs here and there for a few months a year, it's going to take a really long time to explore it. So I think that looking at new and emerging technologies, both for the collection of data and also for the analysis of data, is going to be really critical and is really critical. Steve mentioned citizen science projects, also looking at machine learning and artificial intelligence, because you just can't have enough people looking at all this data that's being collected, and being able to make discoveries both from data that's already been collected and that which we're going to be collecting over the years is going to be absolutely critical. Yeah.
One area of interest to me is it's very difficult to get a signal from the bottom of the ocean to the top of the ocean, even when you're only a few hundred or few thousand feet away from the robot or the submarine. Through water communications without a wire is some area that I'd love to see evolve tremendously, because right now it's very poor. And even communicating with a sub verbally, forget video transfer, it's difficult. So there's a lot of technology development. Katie alluded to it, but I think there's a whole lot still to be done there.
I think from the end user, I think those early days were how hard it was to have bandwidth for the receiving side, where we had to bring people to theaters and stuff like that, where now people are going to be watching us on their watch pretty soon, and I mean that people can connect with us pretty much anytime and any place, and that is going to change it, and the way we can interact. You mentioned Facebook, and they'll be videoing us, and I think everything we do now is prepping us for whatever the next technology is going to be. We don't know, but we're figuring this out, and we'll be ready for the next step. So.
Brian, how will NOAA be using telepresence in the future?
Well, a couple different ways. I think there's 2 different paths of improvement. There's improving the education, outreach, engagement side, and then there's improving the actual science operations. And the U.S. research fleet is honestly aging and shrinking. And even the new vessels that are coming online a lot of times are smaller and have fewer bunks. So the days of being able to go to sea with 20 or 30 graduate students and a huge multidisciplinary team to go somewhere, they're kind of coming to an end. So using telepresence in new and novel ways to improve the efficiency of what we're doing. It takes a lot of time and work to sail a vessel out into the middle of the ocean, so we've got to make most of that time as we're there. So offloading data to shore to be processed overnight and then turning it back to the ship, automating certain things, just having people watch standing from shore, operating sonars in real time without taking up a berth on the ship, are all ways that we're starting to look and do some research into what it would take to really improve the efficiency and use telepresence more than just letting the scientists be on shore and communicate their desire, but really doing data analysis and some engineering task from the shore over the satellite link. I think one of the things that's really exciting coming up is the advancements in the satellite telecommunication fields. Different orbiting satellites, high throughput satellites, things like that are coming online, are really going to allow a lot of new and novel operations at sea that sometimes we take for granted on shore because everyone's smartphone can do FaceTime. You routinely hear about telemedicines, doctors consulting, but all that's over high bandwidth fiber optic connections that you don't have at sea. And now that the new satellite constellations are coming online in the next 5 to 10 years, it's really going to open a lot of doors for doing higher bandwidth required kind of operations on ships as well.
One thing, go ahead, Jeff.
So I think we've talked about less people at sea, but when I listened to your 2 answers about what hooked you guys was what? When you went to the Caribbean, when you got off that ship, right? So we need to think, how can we do this but still give the experience to the young students from whatever age that is, from grade school to graduate school at sea, because that is I think what hooked every one of us to have that passion. And I don't know if you get that hook with telepresence right away. I think it's a way for the big ones, but we need to think both. There is a value of having people on board that ship or under the water as well. And then I think what telepresence does, it enhances it so more people can do it more of the time, still be with their family, you know, and all that. So
And never
I don't
underestimate
think you're gonna.
the importance of the number of bunks on a ship.
Yep.
Yeah.
That limits how many people can go.
Yeah.
And with more and more technology now available and used on the ship itself, that means more and more technicians. They're super important to cruises now.
Good point.
And fewer in-place scientists possibly because of that.
And it's not just NOAA vessels that are getting smaller and smaller. The National Science Foundation is also retiring bigger ships and replacing them with smaller ones. So it's only going to be more critical for us to.
And it really seems that it's more critical to do the exploration because we just need to know what's down there. We need to know how it's going to help
When was
us.
the last time on land we only knew what was 5% of the land contained? 500 years ago in the United States, probably, somewhere like that. So we're 500 years behind terrestrial characterization, really.
One thing I want to throw in here, just because we have a little bit of time left, Steve, both you and I have actually lived underneath the ocean. Do you think that that potentially might be next frontier for things? I mean, can you imagine being able to we have one undersea habitat in the whole world, and it sits in the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. It's run by the Florida International University. But you know, scientists are able to dive out in the ocean and spend hours underwater. Do you think that's the future? Do you think we could have more of those Aquarius type habitats around the world living underwater, doing more discovery?
Well, I can start
Steve?
by saying, at least personally for me, I'd say no, but that might only be because my imagination isn't big enough. And knowing the work it takes to keep just that one habitat in place, it's super difficult. I hope the answer is yes, but I fear in my lifetime, the answer is no.
With telepresence from the habitat, it's so exciting.
That is
so
exciting.
cool to be able to talk to people who are living underwater. It's kind of this Jules Verne feel for things. What do you think, Jeff?
You know, as we talk about more space exploration and that would be a good laboratory, I guess, for that, preparing people for those types of things. So I don't know, but I know I was fortunate to spend a couple of months working down there. I know how cool that place is and how inspiring it was, and then the real research, right, that was being done there. So I think there's a great value in it, but I think as these other technologies come through, the payback will be greater for the investment in the robotics and stuff like that.
Okay, well, I just want to real quickly ask all of you a quick question about what's the most exciting discovery you've ever seen through telepresence? Brian.
That's a hard one. So there's so many. And at the danger of stealing Steve's, because we've talked about this in the past.
Can I go first?
Okay, Steve.
No, I'm not
I'll go to
going
no. So there's a couple different examples that it's been really exciting for me to see the power of telepresence. So, you know, having an interdisciplinary team that is very broadly experienced but may not always be paying the closest attention, but they're still passively watching. So down in the Cayman Rise area, we were working, and I think it was 2011, it was one of my early cruises, so I was super impressionable then, and these things left more of a mark then. But we were steaming along, the RV was running across the bottom. We were kind of looking at tube worms, because we'd seen some tube worms that were surprising, and we were focusing on that. And then as we passed over, just kind of took a right turn with the ROV, someone on shore just starts yelling, screaming, stop, 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 stop. And we back up and we're like, we didn't see anything. We only had the two scientists on the Oceanus at the time were biologists. And they're like, what? And they're like, go back, look at the sediment, look at the ground. And it was a lava formation that to those of us biologists on the boat really didn't look all that interesting. But to the geologist on shore, it was a revolutionary thing that you shouldn't have seen, and what would have been lava reaching the seafloor in an ultra-slow spreading center in the Caribbean Trench. And we would have never made that discovery, which really fundamentally changed the understanding of the geophysics there. If the geologist hadn't been passively watching alone, we would have just kind of blown past that random little seafloor ripple and not made that discovery. But telepresence allowed us to do that.
Nice. Steve.
So my moment was in the NOAA Ocean Exploration Center. Is that what we call it? It's a room where you go sit and watch high-def video of an ongoing expedition. And we were doing a shipwrecks expedition in the Gulf of Mexico. And we had 1 day left on it, and we wanted to go explore one new shipwreck that had showed up on an image, a side scan sonar. And CBS got interested. So they showed up at the Exploration Center to videotape this. And while they were videotaping, all the archaeologists, these high-level folks, were sitting in the front row of the center. And here we were approaching this shipwreck. And the closer we got to it, the less it looked like a shipwreck, but nobody did know what it was. And all us biologists were standing in the back expecting to be in the back row for the shipwreck exploration. And it turned out it wasn't a shipwreck at all, but it was, well, we didn't know. It was a big black thing, like a big rock sticking out of the bottom. And we realized immediately it wasn't a shipwreck, so the archaeologists got up and moved to the back row. The biologists sat down in the front row. And CBS recorded our ability to change midstream the entire expedition, the emphasis of it, where we didn't waste a bunch of time with archaeologists on a boat. I'm sorry about that, but it would have been a waste. It would have been trouble if this was just an at-sea expedition with archaeologists on a boat and biologists not there to characterize it.
And it's exploration, right? Because you don't know what you're going to see,
You don't
if
know.
anything.
And
And
it
that's
turned
the
out to be
power.
this big asphalt extrusion, like this gigantic piece of asphalt that squeezed out of the bottom and formed what looked like a jester's cap, really. It broke into pieces. We didn't even know that until we were able to make a phone call to Ian McDonald, who was doing an expedition, I think, in Mexico at the time. And somebody had said, oh, I think Ian's seen these things before. We called Ian. 10 minutes later, we knew what it was, and then we were able to complete the work. And it was really an aha moment for me, just the value of telepresence, not just the discovery itself.
That's great, Steve. Asphalt. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Katie.
It's like a gesture. Yeah, that's good
Point.
It was
You can tell
really
he's
cool.
a biologist. Okay, Katie.
Yeah, well, the list is long, but I'll choose one story. In 2011, we were working in the Straits of Sicily. It's an area between Sicily and Tunisia. In the middle of the Mediterranean. And it was really a geologically focused project. So we had lots of geologists on board who were interested in the volcanic activity in the area. So we, on October 31st, 2011, were doing an ROV dive looking for evidence of volcanic activity. And all of a sudden, somebody wrote into the website and asked, have you ever found any World War II airplanes before? And we said, no, we haven't, but in this area, we certainly could. And 30 seconds later, our ROV pilot on board, Brendan Phillips, said, oh my God, because he saw the shape of an airplane in the scanning sonar from the ROV, and we approached it, and there was an Italian World War II
Very cool.
airplane, which we documented as best we could, sent the data off to the Sicilian Department of Antiquities, and then continued on our way. But it just was incredible. And we didn't even know what it was or were able to identify it. People who were watching on Sicily and Pantelleria, another Italian island close by, were also watching and writing in and saying, oh my gosh, this is from the Battle of Pantelleria against the British, and 2 or 3 airplanes went down. So it really was
Very cool.
an incredible experience.
Jeff.
I've been lucky enough to be part of a few shipwreck discoveries, and they are absolutely amazing to be a part of. But I think I'll go a different route. In 2005, we were opening up our visitor center, and we were doing a telepresence event at the grand opening. And Dr. Ballard was there on the stage, and we had a diver in Monterey Bay in the kelp forest talking, and the audience didn't know what was going on. Bob was giving his talk, and then we went live. And Bob started interviewing the diver, and it was a monumental effort to set this up and get it going. And there was zero reaction from the audience. Like, they're just sitting there, and we did all this, I can't believe it's not working. And what I found out later is people thought that it was timed video, and people thought we had staged this kind of interview. Then somebody shouted something out at the audience, and the diver responded to it. And the whole place just stopped. There wasn't a sound, not a fork drop, and it was where I saw the power of what this live video, especially when there's a human interaction going back and forth with people, and it really opened our eyes up there, like how we can really use this to connect people. And it wasn't a new discovery, but it was a diver underwater 3,000 miles away talking to a group of people opening an exhibit, and it was just a phenomenal night and phenomenal experience. So.
Yeah, I think for me, because when I saturated in Aquarius, I was actually had the big, huge yellow Kirby Morgan helmet on, talking back to Thunder Bay. Yeah. So that was amazing to me, to talk to the kids in Thunder Bay as a diver, talking about the importance of protecting the ocean from the bottom of the ocean. It was awesome.
And to watch kids react with it is amazing. And I think there's this worry that it could become stale because we can all Skype and FaceTime and do all these things now. But I think because it's underwater, that changes it, right? It's still unique because of that aspect, or way offshore, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Julie, you still there?
Oh, I would have to say I really enjoyed being on the Nautilus last year and participating. And our first dive was west of Santa Barbara Island. And this is in addition to the mysterious purple orb. But we were coming up this rock face. It was a pinnacle. And when we got up near the surface, there were these really odd shaped rocks that looked like they were man-made. They were perfectly spherical, looked like oversized pills, and I didn't know what they were. And then the geologists on board were like, "Oh my gosh, these are mud concretions. This is really cool. This is evidence that this feature here was once above the surface of the ocean." So with the whole story of how the ocean is a dynamic place, and that things out there, it hasn't always looked this way, and that in previous thousands of years ago, features that are now hundreds of feet underwater were exposed. And so that was really exciting for me to just sort of make that connection. I'd never seen it before. And then I was showed a beach up in Oregon later that had these same sorts of mud concretion stones on the beach. And so it was a pretty aha moment for me of the power of what telepresence can do. Discovery.
What amazing aha stories, and there are plenty more to see and hear. And don't forget to watch nautiluslive.org, because they are live right now. So check it out, and go to the Okeanos webpage or the Ocean Exploration Research website, because you can check when their expeditions are coming up. There's more Nautilus at Channel Islands this summer.
That's right.
Just tons of exploration going on. Jeff, you always have stuff going on up in Thunder Bay when it's summertime. But thanks so much for all of you for joining me in the studio today. It's always great to talk about telepresence and live stuff. So thanks for joining me on Oceans Live. So thanks again, and thank you all out there for joining me today and for giving us all a glimpse of the world beneath the waves. At 1:30 p.m., Capital Ocean Week will continue with the discussion on how to communicate conservation and science in a way that will stand out. Then we'll return with more Capitol Hill Ocean Talk at 3 p.m. when we'll be talking about how to tackle illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. We'll see you then. Thanks for watching.
That should be much more accurate than auto depth once it gets settled in.
Would I just step down half?
Yeah, so right now your goal is